welcome the director and co-founder of Life Extension Foundation, Bill Faloon.
Thank you so much. Group, I want you to know that every PowerPoint I'm going to show is on the agereversal.net. Every single one. So it gives you an opportunity to pay attention to what I'm saying, because on this website, this entire PowerPoint and others are there for your viewing. Now, in about 15 minutes, I'm going to make an announcement that is unprecedented in the history of medical science. In fact, what you're going to learn at RAADfest this weekend is unparalleled in the history of the human race. Before we delve into the science, I want to put into context where we are today compared to 10 years ago. This is a group of people who attended the Manhattan Beach Longevity Summit in November 2009. We gathered this group of mostly scientists to identify just one intervention that could reverse a pathological aging mechanism. We were just seeking something, one way for us to grow a little younger, because we were all, unfortunately, aging to death. So we had a really nice logo made, Nuke Aging, and we used Manhattan Beach Project to make it analogous to the Manhattan Beach Project in Los Alamos, New Mexico. We were in a hurry. So the goal, one intervention to reverse aging. We've got 55 mostly scientific people together. There was no registration fee for this, by the way. Life Extension paid for the hotel, the travel, the meals, everything. We paid $60,000 to get this group of scientists together because, hey, we were aging to death and nothing could be done to reverse it. And after 3 straight days, absolutely nothing. Nothing that we could validate that could make an older person grow biologically younger. That was the harsh reality. It was total desperation 10 years ago at the Manhattan Beach Conference. Absolute disaster. Move forward to 2019. And you got the covers of prestigious scientific magazines talking about a cure for biological aging. And it has a lot to do with what I'm going to tell you about tonight. A cure for biological aging. 2009, nothing. And look at where we are. You go to the airport, you may see this Time magazine special edition. It's all about rapamycin and a number of therapies that you are familiar with. And what they say in this magazine is that aging is no longer a dreadful inevitability. It's just a puzzle that can be solved, just like a disease. And look at what we're doing right now. This puzzle, that involves 10 different age reversal interventions that our Life Extension Group, the Age Reversal Network, a number of other charities, we have studied some of these, or all of them in one way or another, in humans, and we're seeing results. So what is being talked about in the media is being done right now by people in this room. It's absolutely spectacular. And the concept of living for an indefinite period of time, it's now appearing in prestigious scientific journals. The reporters talk to the scientists who are making aging in reverse in the laboratory. They're talking to me about what we're doing with human studies, and they're realizing that people are going to start living a real long time. The prospect of immortality, it's no longer science fiction. It is turning into scientific reality, and the media is picking up on it. I'm going to tell you why in just a few minutes, but they're picking up on the fact that aging is going to be conquered very, very soon. We are cheating aging every single day. And most of you are doing that with how you delay it, with the various interventions that you utilize. But we need to move it backwards, because we can't just slow down something forever. We need to put it in reverse. Now, if you look at where we were, wow, a terrible time 10 years ago. Move forward just 10 years. Major, major advances that occurred. Major, major advances. And we're looking at the conferences right now. If you wonder why there's not 5,000 people in this room, by the way, well, there are 30 rated longevity conferences around the country, around the world, and those conferences are listing RAADfest. And the money is pouring into venture capital firms and scientists' hands who are seeking to find a cure for aging. This girl, Laura Deming, she started when she was 23 years of age. She's now managing a portfolio of $37 million invested in a number of companies seeking to keep you alive indefinitely. We are robbing people from conventional companies. They're joining companies like Life Biosciences. They raised $75 million. Now that's as of March. I've heard tonight from Aubrey de Grey that they've been raising a lot more than $75 million. Their objective of raising all this money, find a way to reverse aging in all of us. That is their objective. And Alex Soveronikov, this is an example of someone who never stops working to find a cure for aging. I've known him for a number of years. Back about 4 or 5 years ago, our Life Extension group invested about $140,000 into his in silico medicine group. And since then, he's raised many more millions. And just recently, he's raised $37 million to do all types of research. And I point this out because $140,000 a couple of years ago, it was a significant amount, but he's transformed that into something much bigger. And it shows how a little bit of money now can grow into something absolutely huge. Absolutely huge. And the all-time leader at the moment as far as fundraising, Jim Mellon, he talked at RAADfest this year. His Juvenescence group has raised $165 million as of this date. And I also heard from people that he's gone well above that in fundraising. And he put $20 million of his own money into these technologies so that we can all live to be at least 150 years of age. So if you look at what's going on, how humanity has been able to expand, and by the way, this was the Wall Street Journal, just a couple months ago, reported that the number of people living to age 100 and above has doubled. Wow, absolutely doubled. A 2.5-fold increase in the number of people who are reaching that centenarian status and above. And look what they're projecting. By year 2030, there will be nearly a 5-fold increase in the number of Americans living to age 100 and above. And that is without the age reversal technologies you're going to learn about this weekend. Just with improvements in conventional medicine, we're going to have a record number of centenarians by year 2030. And it's going to go way beyond that. Now, I want to put some context into this. It's very important. From 1980 to 2000, there were massive improvements in the relative number of Americans living to age 100. But look at 2000. It started to drop. What happened around 2000? Well, obesity. We've got an epidemic of obesity. You look at the maps on the screen. 1994, there wasn't a whole lot of it. 2000, people started getting heavier and more diabetic. And then 2015, it's like a plague that swept the United States. That those dark red areas indicate the percentage of people diabetic and obese. It's an absolute travesty, and it's circumventing the ability of most people to enjoy a lot longer life. And as it relates to losing weight, I know it's challenging. We're going to help you out here a little bit, but your rate of cancer turns out is much higher than what they previously projected. They've always known obese people have greater cancer risk. This study just 2 months ago showed the risk of cancer far higher in obese individuals. And if you want to maintain healthy neurological function, well, if you're obese, you have a 3.5-fold increase in your risk of developing dementia. All kind of good reasons to want to shed belly fat or total fat. Good reasons. Now, I'm going to report a little bit on our rapamycin clinical trial. This was initiated about 1.5 years ago. The dosage was what we recommended here at RAADfest for people to consider, 5 milligrams of rapamycin just once a week. We recruited people from our age reversal network, and there were about 20 overweight people. 14 concluded. No one dropped out because of side effects, by the way. But here was the big problem. We had, unfortunately, major fires in California. And it caused their such stress that they couldn't really deal with their health because their houses were burning down. They were inhaling smoke. But what we were able to see in this rapamycin study were significant reductions in the visceral fat mass. Very, very important. If you're going to live to be 100 or older, you got to shed belly fat. And this dose of rapamycin showed those indications. And in people who were in the non-smoke affected areas who were in this trial, the rapamycin was demonstrating some indicators of age reversal. So this study is going to get published very soon, and then we're going to send it out to everyone in this room. But the good news is the rapamycin experimental dose of 5 milligrams just once a week, well tolerated, and yet we knew high stress. We found that high stress offset many of the benefits of this regenerative technique. So this is our revised stair-step approach to biological age control. Activate AMPK, and I bet almost everyone in this room is doing that one way or another. You're taking metformin. You're using curcumin, green tea, gynostemma pentaphyllum. You're using interventions to activate cellular AMPK, which is real good for you. Second step, senolytics. You want to reduce your senescent cell burden. The current gold standard protocol is dasatinib and quercetin, and a lot of you are doing that. I've done it a couple times since last year's RAADfest. We, of course, want to restore youthful NAD levels, and autophagy, that's that cellular junk that builds up inside our cells that Aubrey de Grey has talked about for decades. And the problem was we couldn't do much about it. Well, rapamycin helps to remove that cellular debris so that our cells can start functioning in a more youthful manner. So you go steps 1 through 4 and biologics. Well, those are exosomes, stem cells, stem cell mobilized plasma, all kinds of techniques to then truly rejuvenate you in a meaningful way. But steps 1 through 4, very important. And if we do all this, we think we're going to make it to 2030. CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology will then likely be the ultimate cure for biological aging. Now, a lot of people ask, I'm going to grow older. How am I going to feel? Well, a study came out in The Lancet, very interesting this year, that people have a lot of control over how they're going to feel. This slide makes it a lot easier to understand. If you live in Papua New Guinea and you're 46 years old, you have the age-related health problems of a 65-year-old. It's kind of scary. 46 and you're degenerating. You feel old, you got medical issues. But if you live in Japan, you don't start feeling 65 until you're 76. That's a 30-year gap. And that tells us we have a tremendous amount of control right now over how long we live and how soon we develop degenerative illnesses. And if you wonder where the United States ranked, pretty bad. 54th on this list of countries where people experience age-related health problems either early in life or much later. And that's pretty bad. But don't worry just because you're in the United States, most of you. Not a big deal. A lot of it is where you live. And there are huge variances in stroke incidence. It really shows that different parts of the country, they have very low rates of cardiovascular disease, stroke, cancer, dementia, because they take care of themselves. And that map, the deep purple areas, are where people are having lots of strokes, lots of heart attacks. And if you look at those areas, you understand these people smoke tobacco. They eat horrifically. They're obese. They have low socioeconomic status in many cases. They're having strokes a lot earlier than typical Americans who take care of themselves. So if you want to join the surging numbers of Americans living to 100 and over without anything we're going to talk about this year, just to have a chance to make it, you got to take care of yourself. The data is incredible. And the incredible news also is the business community is waking up to this. And I've never seen this before, and I've been doing this professionally since 1977. But the greatest investment that the mainstream financial houses are talking about are companies that are working to delay human death. I haven't heard that before. That's really a whole new thing for me, and it's also in this article. Death-delaying technologies is where money is being poured into, because with people living older, they're going to want to feel healthier, they want to feel better, and this is one way to make that happen. And if you wonder why we're getting so much positive media, why we're getting so much recognition, well, a lot of it's in the peer-reviewed, published scientific journals. They're reporting on what you learned at RAADfest in 2016, 2017, 2018. They're reporting on it. And business people are looking at this thinking, wow, we're eventually going to make people grow younger. There's a lot of money to be made there, and that's why a lot of money is going into these projects. Problem is, it's not going to benefit most of us in this room because they're going through standard approval processes. That could take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We don't have that kind of time to wait. So with all this technology coming out, Harvard talking about finding a DNA switch that can enable whole body regeneration. That came out this year. It's just absolutely incredible. And the Salk Institute, using some CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology early on, and they took a group of progeroid mice who were on the verge of death, and they completely rejuvenated them. It was incredible. This was in the media, and the mice lived longer, but they looked at their internal organs, and they grew younger simply by removing senescent cells using CRISPR-Cas9 therapy. A major, major breakthrough, barely made it into the media. And the good news is, with major institutions like Harvard being able to use NAD boosting therapies. That's David Sinclair at Harvard. He talks about that all the time, does a great job on it. And then Dr. Barzilai at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, a metformin advocate. We're getting the publicity we need to carry this through to the next level. A lot of people now are taking metformin. For those who don't know, by the way, our Life Extension group recommended it to our members in our magazine 24 years ago, March 1995 issue. FDA went berserk, by the way, went absolutely berserk over the fact we were telling people to import metformin, because back then it was expensive, and just start taking it to slow your rate of aging. And now the data on it is really, really strong. I've been getting some interesting media coverage. Last year I talked about the Popular Science calling me the Forever Man, because they would interview scientists who were reversing aging in animals. But these scientists didn't have the vision to realize that what they were doing in the laboratory is going to be translated into clinical practice, and people are going to start reversing their aging process. And because of that Popular Science article, well, I've gotten a lot of nice publicity, a lot of nice interviews, and last month, the cover of MIT Technology Review, the cover proclaims old age is over. And that was based on a lot of interviews. Yeah, it's incredible. MIT. They proclaimed it was over, and they poked a little fun at it too, but you know what? They gave RAADfest coverage. In one of the most respected scientific publications out there, they gave RAADfest coverage, and they talked about my perpetual clinical trial. And at the top of this is, if you want it, they were questioning whether people would really want to rejuvenate their bodies and grow biologically younger. They were questioning it, but they realized that I was going to try to make that happen. And so they gave us some nice publicity. Some of you may know, back in 2013, I did something rather unusual. Beyond our Life Extension group, our Age Reversal Network, I set up the Church of Perpetual Life. And it's accomplished exactly what I expected it to do. It's garnered media attention from around the world. This is a picture from the news documentary Galileo. It is the most significant documentary series in German-speaking Europe. And they did a 2-day interview with me at my house, at the church, and I had people from Germany calling me up and say, Bill, we just saw you on TV. And it was incredible. We're infiltrating the world. Pretty much every country or continent has had people at the Church of Perpetual Life covering what we do. Now, if we have the ability for whole body regeneration, which Harvard might be on the verge of making that happen, we certainly want to maintain youthful cognitive function. One of those areas that we have to support is our microglial cells. Now, these are cells that support our neurons. They enable the brain to protect itself against infections, and most importantly, they clean up the toxins that build up around our neurons with aging that create cognitive impairment and dementia and that sort of thing. In this study, which is so fantastic, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about it. They transplanted young bone marrow into old mice, and this is the results that they got. We talked about synapses there, but this is the result. This is the one slide I really wanted you to see, because on the far left is a young mouse with dendritic synaptic branches just sprouting from it, like a healthy young person. But the old mouse, it's a shriveled cell, like a shriveled person with sarcopenia, osteoporosis. So they took old bone marrow and put it into old mice, and they didn't see anything, no improvement in the microglial cell health. But when they took young bone marrow, transplanted that into older mice, they were able to completely rejuvenate the microglial cells. That box to the far right in red, that's a old mouse with young bone marrow, and its microglial cell is identical to that of a young mouse. And as it relates to activity, that young bone marrow put into the old mice, wow, what a major, major improvement. Hard to imagine something working this well. The young mouse, the upper gray box, running around a cage, very active, but the old mouse not doing it so much. But that bottom box with the red around it, that's the activity level of an old mouse with young bone marrow. This is so critical to understand that this study demonstrated how we can reverse aging. Not that people should do this right now, but you're going to learn from a number of people on this stage how you may be able to emulate these kinds of incredible findings. Johnson & Johnson's putting money into research like this. A Stanford scientist, they transfused serum from a 12 to 15-month-old mouse, and that's middle age, by the way, 12 to 15 months, and it reversed some signs of brain aging. But guess what? When they took very young serum, and put it into older mice, they had almost complete rejuvenation of their brain. These synaptic branches, dendritic branches, improvements in synaptic function, all of this with very young blood. And to put it into context, you can see what a 15-month mouse looks like to the right, and they look pretty old, even though they're only in mid-age. But look at that 15-day-old mouse. Very small. Its blood biochemistry, very, very different. And what we're going to show you is that there are actually 2 proteins in very young blood that were probably responsible for that rejuvenating effect. 2 proteins, thrombospondin 4, spark-like protein 1, and the great news is they can make them in the laboratory. They're recombinant proteins that they can make, which means you don't have to go out and rob nurseries. You can, hopefully within the next year or 2, have these proteins put into your body and enjoy some spectacular brain rejuvenation. And by the way, nobody should be transplanting young bone marrow into their bodies now. That's because, unlike mice, we are not genetically identical. And if you were to undergo a bone marrow transplant, you risk graft versus host. So you're going to get to hear a lot of speakers this weekend talking about exosomes. You're going to hear Dr. Maharaj at Rad City talking about bone marrow stem cell stimulation in a way you can emulate many of the benefits that they show in a mouse model in humans and do it safely. We're growing old, frail, we take a fall, we break a bone, and our risk of death is really, really high. 50% risk of death in certain people who take falls. Well, the good news is that when young bone marrow stem cells are put into the site of the injury in a mouse, a remarkable improvement in the rate of healing. And that's very important because an older person, when they take the fall itself doesn't kill them per se. It's that months after month of being laid up, being immobilized. People develop sepsis, pneumonia, problems develop. So this is a very important development for the people who develop a fracture. Very, very important. Now, everyone likes the concept of young stem cells, but what actually happens from the bone marrow is those stem cells differentiate into progenitor cells that then differentiate into functional cells, which we need, that then result in healthy tissues. This is something very important. And progenitor cells can self-renew, or they can differentiate into a healthy cell that enables your organs to function. And again, bone marrow is where the stem cells are produced that we all want lots of, and stem cells produce all kind of good cells. And this slide also indicates that when we have a healthy progenitor cell, it can produce another healthy progenitor cell. It can actually self-renew or differentiate into a functional somatic cell. Our stem cells, they age just like our somatic cells. And when we're 60, 70, 80, we still retain a lot of those stem cells. They're just getting old. But if you activate AMPK, which most of you are already doing, by activating AMPK, you suppress excess mTOR-C, replenish your NAD levels. I know most of you are doing that, and activate sirtuin proteins. Resveratrol does that, by the way. By doing that, you can help restore the health of your stem cells. It's really spectacular what can be done with what you're doing already. And if you are going to undergo a stem cell therapy, well, if you do all this, you're going to get a better result. Harsh reality, 90% of people at 65, you know what? We've got health problems. Usually it's multiple health problems. And that gets in the way. If we're going to achieve a house of optimal health, we do need a foundation. That's absolutely critical. Before we move to the top, we need a foundation. So bottom level is what you already should be doing. Keeping your blood pressure in low normal ranges. You want to make sure your glucose, your lipids, your homocysteine, you want that in optimal ranges so that when you graduate into the age reversal interventions, you have a hospitable body that's going to enable those interventions to work better. And we have people, by the way, who aren't controlling their blood pressure. They've got LDL particles that are way too high, and then they want to rush into an age reversal intervention. And I have to tell them, get level 1. Perfect level 1, because we can do that already, and then move into the experimental age reversal interventions that we're working on right now. So again, our current stair-step approach to biological age control, activating AMPK, you can do that, by the way, without taking anything. If you just restrict your calorie intake, do intermittent fasting most of the week, you'll boost AMPK. If you don't want to restrict your calorie intake, metformin, nutrients like curcumin, and aerobic exercise. These are ways that you can boost your AMPK levels. There's probably nothing more important than almost every one of you in this room should be doing, because I'm trying to look for some young people, it may not pertain to them. We accumulate senescent cells as we age. We've known that forever, and we couldn't do anything about it. But the good news is there are therapies that we're validating that are going to reduce the senescent cell burden in your body. And by doing that, you're going to have a greater state of health, because what these senescent cells do is they emit chronic inflammatory signals, and they also emit protein-degrading enzymes, metalloproteinases they're called, and they literally eat away at healthy cells that are surrounding them. So if you're going to do any kind of age reversal intervention, you need to reduce the senescent cell burden. And this photograph has appeared a lot in the media. You can see a normal aged mouse. It's like a normal aged person. It's got lots of health problems, and it looks old and it's unhealthy. When they started treating a group of mice with senolytics starting in mid-age, they did not have these problems, and they lived a lot longer. So in the animal model, that's been proven over and over again. But what we've discovered this year is that there are potent anti-cancer properties to senolytics. They can probably reduce your risk of developing cancer. And just think, by reducing the inflammatory burden, you reduce a major factor involved in malignancies developing and progressing. So this Science article had a very in-depth interviews with the experts in senolytics, and they felt that if you have cancer already, the senolytics might be an effective adjuvant therapy in addition to everything else you're doing. So this is really, really exciting. And as it relates to heart failure, 8 million Americans suffer chronic heart failure. The official data is a little bit over 5 million, but there are really over 8 million Americans. And the great news is this year is we're finding that the removal of senescent cells improves the recovery in mice with damaged cells. And then when we looked at the humans, and bear in mind, I want to repeat that we like to have a lot of healthy progenitor cells, and in doing so, well, we're able to regenerate our heart in a lot of different ways. But this is what's really exciting. They did biopsies in humans, and they found that if you're over 70 years of age and you have underlying cardiovascular disease, half of your progenitor cells in your heart are senescent. About half are not really functioning. If you remove the senescent cells, you then activate the progenitor cells that can restore healthy function to an aging heart. This is a potential major breakthrough. Clinical trials are urgently needed. But if you or you know somebody who has congestive heart failure and they've already been through CoQ10 and taurine and hormones, that's bought them a couple years, eventually they die, senolytic therapy would be a fascinating way to potentially heal those aging hearts. So we're seeing the incredible amount of information coming out, and I could do a presentation here on just senolytics alone. Instead, I put it at our agereversal.net website. You can look at it at your leisure, but the amount of data just since last year's RAADfest is outrageously positive. It's hard to imagine anyone not wanting to purge their body of senescent cells. Now, every year, I put on a couple slides of the billionaires who died, and this one is particularly interesting, though. T. Boone Pickens, very famous in the investment community. When he was around 88, 89, he joked about his age. He says he felt immortal. And I have a problem with certain people who are that age, and I'm suggesting some interventions to reverse that aging process, and they say, Bill, you know what? I feel okay today. And so did T. Boone Pickens when he says, I feel immortal. I don't think anything's going to happen to me anytime soon. Well, about a year later, he suffered a series of strokes, a fall, and he's dead at age 91. So he's an example of the fact that we can't. I'm going to turn 65 real soon. I don't treat 65 as a joke. It's a disaster. I need to intervene very, very radically. And if I was his age, you can imagine what I would be doing. So what we're going to talk about here is an announcement that you're going to read about. We've got a lot of media covering this right now. But wouldn't you like to actually been there at Kitty Hawk when the Wright brothers were testing out the different gliders, working on a motor to make something happen that changed the world forever? Wouldn't you like to be there? Well, guess what? You are there. Right now, we are launching the most ambitious biomedical study in history. No one's ever attempted to do this before. We're going to launch it. I hope others copy, by the way. It's called Vitality and Aging. That's the name of the study. And the fundamental challenge we had is, to do this right, we'd need 5 years and $50 million. Well, most of us can't wait 5 years before something major happens, and we didn't have $50 million. So what we put together, two studies were put together. Number one, it's the Vitality and Aging longitudinal study. That's a study that everyone can enroll in. Very, very good news. A longitudinal study. And then, based on the data we acquire from you as an individual, we can then determine whether you qualify for the interventions trial. Interventions mean we give you all kinds of stuff, that whole stair-step approach to biological age control. You get the dasatinib and the rapamycin and metformin, the NAD boosters, the biologics. You get all that for free if you qualify for the interventions trial. And again, this entire presentation on that website. So step one, for anyone who seriously wants to intervene in their aging process, is join the Vitality and Aging Longitudinal Study right here at RAADfest. We modeled this after the Framingham Heart Study. Long term, there's no limit as to how long we're going to push this forward. And in case you don't know about Framingham, it is how they identified the risk factors that cause us to have heart attacks and strokes. Framingham has been going on for a long time, and we use that term risk factor a lot as it relates to things we shouldn't eat or lifestyles that are dangerous. Well, the whole concept of risk factor came out of Framingham. That's where the term was founded. So what we're doing at the Vitality and Aging Longitudinal Study is we're going to identify risk factors causing you to age. We're going to provide access to biomarker tests at really low subsidized prices. We've got testing labs around the country who are virtually donating some of these tests to us so that we can make them widely available at deeply discounted prices. These are not things that we're selling, by the way, but we're going to refer you to sources around the world making some of these therapies available for virtually nothing. So where we are with the funding, we need about $800,000 a year. So far, I've covered this all myself. 100% of the cost of this have been myself and the donations of physicians' time. We've received donations of $395,000 as of 3 days ago. But one of our supporters didn't like that. He didn't like the fact that we were launching the most ambitious clinical trial in human history, and we only had $395,000 in the bank, plus my commitment to make up the difference. He didn't like that. So he texted me just an hour ago, indicating $210,000 is on the way. That will be up over $600,000 within the next 24 to 48 hours. Yeah. We're getting some recognition. This individual, by the way, is very prolific. He's very wealthy, and he believes he should use his money to accelerate research to keep humanity alive. And he's written some major checks, over $7 million in the last couple of years that I know of. And the charity that we set up to fund this project, we started in January this year, the Human Age Reversal Project. This is where you can make donations, large or small, whatever they do. They help us add more interventions, more clinical tests, enroll more people to keep the individuals alive. And I just want to remind the group, I was trying to raise $10 to $25 million so that we could fund research, get people in. It wouldn't cost them anything because we had a lot of money in the bank. And I never raised enough money to even launch any type of commercial entity. So I refunded $1.2 million to everyone who put money into these commercial ventures. And that was my commitment to them, by the way. I said, if we don't raise at least $10 million, we might as well just refund the money and try a different route. And the charitable route seems to be working because people are writing checks for our charity. So this is how we're going to launch this study here at RAADfest, right at the RAAD clinic. The doctors are donating their time. We've got 6 doctors there who are going to give you medical exams. We've got blood draw stations. We've got testing equipment. Now, you could do this in a doctor's office, if you go to a progressive doctor, that is. It would cost you over $4,000. With the subsidized prices we're getting, we've brought it down to $595. I put a couple $100,000 into making this happen, and the doctors have donated their time, some of their equipment, their personnel. That's the only reason why we can do this for $595. We've got a new age management panel. This is the VIA longevity study, and we've added NAD, by the way, to that panel. We're going to test your NAD and all kinds of metabolites, and this is something that you may not have realized how much is important to you. It's a wristband. If you join the study for $595, we will give you a wristband. It costs around $140 if you want to buy it, but that's part of the $595 price. Measures your sleep, quality, and physical activity, but maybe most important, your heart rate variability. This is very important because if you have low heart rate variability, you have a greater risk of dropping dead. And you know what? I don't want anybody who enrolls in a longevity study to die. No one is allowed to die. Therefore, if you want to get into this study, we're including this in the $595 price, you understand. If you want to, you got to wear a wristband and provide us with the information. And in case you don't know, not just heart attack risk, but low heart rate variability, a huge increase in your stroke risk. That is scary. And the idea that you can measure it now, and if it's low, do something to boost it, is fantastic. And again, this is to emphasize how important it is to not let anybody in our longitudinal study die from something that we could have picked up early and done something about. Harvard, by the way, endorses this as a way of testing people to see if they are at a greater risk for a cardiovascular event. If you are, you can go to a cardiologist and hopefully correct that problem. So this is the Morpheus wristband. They're providing it to us, by the way, at a super discounted price, which is why we can include it in the whole package that we're doing. So this is pretty much a list of everything that you get by participating in the longitudinal study: the wristband, standard clinical test, the age management blood test panel, NAD, omega-3 index, a bioimpedance measure. We want to see what your belly fat measure is. We want to see what your muscle mass is. So when you come back in a year, we want to see how well the interventions worked on you. And we're going to test your cognitive function, pulmonary function, a whole lot of tests. We have something called the age meter. It's going to identify how old you are now, and we're going to see how old you are a year from now. We need to know if these interventions are working. And if we get more money, which we have already, we'll be able to do more tests. All of that for that price. Now here's a hidden potential benefit. It's only potential, but we're getting donations, we're getting government grants perhaps. If we raise enough money and you enroll in the longitudinal study here at RAADfest, there may be no further out-of-pocket expenses. In other words, this could be, I can't say for sure at all, it could be free to the people who get in on the ground floor of what we're doing, because you will be very unique people. You've taken care of yourself your whole life. You're going to be doing the AMP activation, removing your senescent cells, restoring NAD, the autophagy. You're going to be doing all of these interventions, so when people have another way to keep you alive, you're the group they're going to want to study. And if it's up to you, you don't have to do any of this stuff, but we'll call you up and say, would you like to have access to a new therapy that's costing maybe $20,000? Would you like to have it available for free? And if we can do that, it would be fantastic. And by the way, if you just want some blood tests, you don't want to enroll in the study, you can get those at RAADfest for $395. The cost, again, would be over $3,000 just for these blood tests. We're making available only at RAADfest right now for this $395, and maybe a week later, that price goes up to $695. So the Vitality and Aging Longitudinal Study, you enroll at Rad City, we do the blood test, all kind of diagnostic tests, and then you use those results to develop your longevity program, and we'll help you with that. And then you retest and then see what we can do to further improve the age reversal efficacy. This is very, very important. So, step 2, and this is only for people who qualified, who meet the strict inclusion criteria. We're looking for about 50 people, maybe more at this point, who will enroll in the interventions trial. And the good news about this one is it's free. We pay for it all. You pay for nothing whatsoever. And the objective of this particular study is to measure statistically significant and meaningful age reversal in 12 months. In other words, next year's RAADfest, we're going to be retesting the people who enrolled in the study to see how much they may have grown biologically younger. And at this point, our Human Age Reversal Project charity is the major funder of it, and we can only do it with the doctors donating their time, me donating a lot of the infrastructure, and making it happen. So step 1, for everyone here who's interested in being part of a group, a research group that we hope will have no upper age threshold, you join the longitudinal study. Then when you get results back, you may be eligible for the interventions trial. That is free. That's coming out of the charity money. It's coming out of doctors donating their time, laboratories subsidizing the tests to a point where we can afford to give it to you for free. So, step 1, longitudinal study. You can enroll at RAADfest. It's easy to do. And then the interventions trial, well, you'll be selected if you meet the criteria. The age reversal interventions. Interventions is another word for therapies. What therapies are we going to use to reverse your aging process? Well, we're going to target calorie restriction pathways. We're going to reduce and resolve inflammation. Those are two different ways, two different mechanisms. We're going to lengthen telomeres. We're going to remove, of course, senescent cells and restore youthful methylation patterns. This is just another chart of what we're going to do if you enroll in the longitudinal study. Some of it you have to pay for, by the way, but you'll get it at heavily subsidized prices. We're going to attack every one of these aspects of aging, so that we hope within 12 months we can see you have grown biologically younger. So this is an open label trial. There will never be a placebo group in any study I'm involved in. We are all aging, I'm afraid, to death at this stage, but I'm not going to let some people just take dummy pills and watch them die. So everyone gets the active interventions. No placebo whatsoever. And we're looking for about 50 people, and you can see there's an age criteria between 50 and 75. So you can see automatically some of you are disqualified. However, if you enroll in a longitudinal study, you gain access to a lot, or everything. You gain access to everything that the people in the intervention trial get for free. And I'm going to try to clarify that more as we talk. And we just had an announcement made right before I went on stage that a group called International Anti-Aging Systems, they're going to give away a lot of free dasatinib. They're going to give it away. You might have to pay for the shipping, but for a couple hundred people who enroll in a longitudinal study, you'll get the senolytic you need to reduce your senescent cell burden for free. And that was told to me right before I went on stage. So we have this big list of things you get for $5.95. You may get a bottle of dasatinib, which is enough for 2 people, probably 2 doses a year. It's really fantastic. This is our timeline. Very, very aggressive, as you can imagine. We need to reverse aging within 12 months in order to make our study work. So again, the first intervention in our interventions trial is calorie restriction mimetics. Look at this chart. It's really amazing. 2018, they looked at 8 aging biomarkers, and if people just reduced their calorie intake by 12%, their age score improved by 1.5 years. Now, when I saw this, I thought, well, how easy? Eat just 12% less? That's not a big thing to ask, but for some people, they won't. So what we're doing is targeting these calorie restriction pathways with metformin, glucosamine, rapamycin, pterostilbene. We're doing that pharmaceutically rather than asking people to undereat. You can undereat if you want, but you don't have to. The objective, increase AMPK, autophagy, sirtuins, NAD, and then decrease excessive mTOR, excess insulin, excessive IGF-1 signals. You want to turn those down, you want to boost the others. This is our objective. So how are we going to regulate all this? Metformin. How many of you, by the way, are taking metformin right now? What percentage of you are taking? Wow, that's pretty good. When you think about the fact that we've been advocating it since 1995, and when you ask your doctor for a prescription and you're not a diabetic, he thinks there's something wrong with you. Well, there's nothing wrong with you because metformin has AMPK boosting activity, which is a way we feel to control aging. So we're going to boost AMPK indirectly with metformin, directly with salicylate. This is not aspirin, by the way, but it has some AMPK boosting functions to it. We're going to inhibit mTOR with rapamycin. And as you may know, rapamycin has been shown to extend lifespan in virtually every animal model tested. It reduces cancer risk in humans, and the new research indicates that rapamycin might enable you to shed some belly fat. Very important, because remember, people with a lot of belly fat, they develop dementia. Their risk of cancer goes up dramatically. So if we can validate through the testing we're going to do, because we're going to test the amount of belly fat you have here at Rad City and see where you are 12 months from now. That's our objective, to reduce that fat mass, turn down inflammation, do a lot of good stuff. Increase sirtuins with pterostilbene. We're going to boost NAD with nicotinamide riboside. All of this is critical, as we know. Restore the NAD-NADH ratio, which goes off kilter when we grow older. So we've got a whole program laid out, and it's available to everyone. And autophagy, rapamycin. Best way to purge the accumulated cellular debris that's in our aging cells. So these are the calorie restriction pathway targets, and we are also going to, of course, remove senescent cells. We're going to use a cocktail of dasatinib, quercetin, and fisetin. We're using these 3 ingredients to remove as many senescent cells from your aging body as we possibly can do. And, of course, inflammation, major problem with aging, and we're going to take care of that with high-dose fish oil, and another marine lipid that you probably haven't heard about yet called resolvins. These return previously inflamed tissues to normal health. So this is going to be included in the interventions trial, or you can buy it yourself. We're going to attempt to elongate telomeres. There is data showing that if you do certain activities like exercise, control your stress, take in a lot of omega-3s, you might be able to elongate your telomeres. We're hoping with the other interventions, you'll also be able to do that. And of course, we want to restore youthful methylation. Very important for your health, and also a way for us to measure how old you're growing or how young you're becoming. That's what we want to do. Measurements are so important. And we think methylation will be balanced with rapamycin, metformin, any other CR mimetics that we use, we think will enhance methylation pathways. Now, these are the advanced tests that are going to be made available to people in that interventions trial. Remember, this is the one that's free. And we've got Johns Hopkins are donating pretty much the tests to enable us to measure telomeres. They're giving us a subsidized price on it, probably below their cost. But Johns Hopkins and University of British Columbia, UCLA, they're recognizing the significance of this study. And they're giving us access to low-cost tests. In the interventions trial, this is all free. And if you're in the longitudinal study, you gain access to them at discount prices if you want that. So again, to emphasize, if you qualify for the VIA, Vitality and Aging Interventions Trial, you get something that's probably worth over $30,000. I like to be conservative in whatever I say, so the value is definitely over $10,000. You get that for free. I don't know how many of you expected that at RAADfest, but that's what I'm announcing right now. Now, here's the problem for some of us. Rather strict inclusion criteria. And the reason for this is we need to demonstrate meaningful and statistically significant age reversal in 12 months. If you are unhealthy now, if you weigh too much, if you have underlying medical conditions, it's going to be hard for us to overcome that in just 12 months. So this is the inclusion criteria. I don't fit into this, by the way. I would not qualify for the interventions trial because I have some issues as it relates to what you're looking at. But if you meet this criteria, and we're going to validate that because you first enroll in the longitudinal study, and we're going to see where you are, then you can participate. And if you aren't eligible, you can still do everything, but you've got to pay for your interventions. And thank goodness metformin costs virtually nothing. And rapamycin and dasatinib, they're sources that cost very, very little. These are not expensive. So the amount of funds donated, $395,000 after a couple days ago. And I said when someone saw this, they got a little bit upset. They said, you're trying to reverse aging? Doing something unprecedented, that's all the money you have. So $210,000 coming in so I can show a more effective number, a more impressive number, let's put it that way. I don't know how many of you are considering this but thinking maybe I'll just do it later. I've been doing this life extension work professionally since 1977. I incorporated the Life Extension Foundation in Florida in January 1977. I have never stopped seeking ways to enable people to live longer, and never thought in my lifetime that I'd be talking on a stage about human age reversal and having interventions available for people to potentially make that happen. If you're thinking, maybe I'll do this later, I hate to tell you, a lot of people just never do it. And we've lost a lot of good supporters because they put off what they should be doing. Step one is the Vitality and Aging longitudinal study. That's open to everybody. Everybody gets into that study. We're going to measure your aging, and when you come back here next year, we're going to test you again and see how well you did with whatever you chose to do, by the way. We're going to give you a recommended list of interventions, and you're going to learn this whole weekend about other therapies that could reverse your aging process. By enrolling in this study, you know where you are today, you get on these other therapies, and then we measure you a year later and find out what's really working. That's what makes this study so important. The funding is $800,000 a year for the longitudinal study. I'm committing to cover all the expenses for the first year, but thank goodness some donations are coming in because that's going to enable us to do more tests, bring in more interventions, enroll more people. Money is coming in. It's something that we haven't had happen before at the velocity it's doing. So this is the new charity to make a tax-deductible donation to. All of the money goes for human age reversal research. I am also committed to paying all the overhead of this charity. No one gets a paycheck. We don't pay even the accountants or the attorneys. I pay them out of my own pocket. So if you donate $1 to the Age Reversal Project, the $1 goes into age reversal research. It is not the typical charity where people actually need the money for overhead costs. I am going to fund the overhead costs of this particular charity. So just to put this into context again, the longitudinal study available to everybody, you should go to the Age Reversal .net to read the details about it, including reviewing my entire PowerPoint presentation in the way it was originally developed. There's some very interesting data that I didn't get to show you. But nonetheless, go to the agereversal.net and read the informed consent material. That's really important because that lets us get you into the study faster. LabCorp was generous enough to set up a blood draw station in Rad City. So you can go to the Life Extension booth or go first actually to the Vitality and Aging booth and enroll in a study, and then LabCorp phlebotomists will do your blood draws, and then at our Vitality and Aging, we're going to be doing the baseline. We're going to measure your belly fat, your muscle mass, your cognitive proficiency, a number of aging markers. And you get the Morpheus wristband. We'll teach you how to use this in the Vitality and Aging booth. This is all included in this price. I'm just going to go through these blood tests quickly. These are some of the tests that are available in this profile. It's been expanded in a way that we are going to be able to identify your rate of aging, including a full NAD metabolite test, so we know how well we're doing as far as boosting our levels. This is unprecedented. Has never been available to anybody before. It's being available now because of what we're doing. So once again, to summarize, the longitudinal study, this is the one you have to pay a little bit of money for, and $5.95 is not a little bit, but what you're getting is all this stuff in addition to the blood tests, which are extensive. And if you only want some blood tests, well, you can get those for $3.95, but then you won't be in our group. And I hope you all want to be part of this circle of dedicated people. These are some of the doctors who are so humanitarian, words don't describe it. They've donated their time. They're at the RAD clinic this whole weekend. They've walked away from their medical practice to give you medical exams, to evaluate where you stand as it relates to aging. This is unprecedented. Dr. James Watson, Richard Gaines, and then Dr. Sturgis in Idaho. Within the next couple months, we'll have doctors around the country. I want to emphasize again, this entire presentation on age-reversal.net, including a link to the informed consent form. So again, the stair-step approach to biological age control, that is what the intervention study is going to provide you with, including exosomes. That is all part of this program. I know a lot of you are doing this already, but if we do it as a group, we will not have people literally running in 100 different directions, which is what happened after previous RAADfests. People get real excited, and they would go here and there and everywhere, and we couldn't figure out what was working, what isn't. We've now structured this so you can be part of a group, be given specific advice. You can choose to ignore it and do your own thing, but we're at least going to be able to measure how well it may have worked. So again, multiple interventions that we have at our disposal right now to potentially reverse your aging process. The stair-step approach, if you make it to year 2030, we cure aging, we start curing just about everything out there, and we are able to merge into the cloud. Merge into the cloud, immortality, and these are people who aren't going to get there. They chose not to put their money in the right direction. They were worth many, many billions, and they died at ridiculously young ages. These multi-billionaires who should have stayed alive one way or another managed, unfortunately, to check out way too early. And there's people, thank goodness, who are making some donations, but had some of these people donated just a little bit of money towards age reversal, they might be alive right now. It's really pathetic that we have that kind of a problem. And again, T. Boone Pickens, his quote, Joe, is so accurate as it relates to people I've spoken to over the years. I say, you ought to do something about that problem. And they say, I feel okay today, as if that's the way they're going to feel going on indefinitely. It just isn't true. T. Boone Pickens, look what he put into a football stadium. $260 million. So the Oklahoma State University has a nice stadium. T. Boone Pickens is a box of ashes. It's kind of pathetic. So if you write money to charities, write checks, you ought to really consider groups like Aubrey de Grey Sens Foundation. There's a couple other charities here, and then our Human Age Reversal Project. It just seems to make more sense that if you're going to donate money to something, let it benefit all of humanity, including yourself. Including yourself. So I'm going to conclude by just reminding you how I started. We truly were doomed 10 years ago. It was a very frustrating 3-day event. So many people were there at that event, and yet we couldn't come up with one solution. We didn't know of anything that could reverse your biological age. And again, that's the group picture to the left, 2009. We moved forward only 10 years and look at the number of interventions that are demonstrating efficacy in studies that we're looking at. And you're going to hear about a lot more. This whole weekend is going to be speakers talking about what they're doing beyond these types of interventions. This is a true fantastic voyage. MIT research came out earlier this year indicating this may become a reality in our lifetime. So, first step to extending your healthy lifespan, no matter what therapy you want to engage in, by the way, is enroll in that longitudinal study. That then gives you baseline data so that 1 year from now, you're going to know whatever you chose, whether it's working, whether it's partially working. So again, this is the charity that's going to fund this research going on, we hope, in perpetuity. And I want to thank everyone for their support of life extension over the last 42 years. That's why we have RAADfest. I was able to get this up off the ground with Jim and so many others, with the People Unlimited group. So thank you very much, and I'll be looking forward to interacting with as many people as I can this weekend.